Welcome to WTF, the only askreddit channel that will blow your mind. Like and subscribe right now to support Pepe's career as an independent musician. What is your bullet freaking dodge moment? When I was back in high school, I was walking near the field when they were practicing their discus throw. One of the discus was wrongly thrown and was headed for my head. A friend who at that time was walking towards me saw this and yelled for me to duck. The discus went past my head and landed behind me. Then I realized that I could have died if my friend hadn't warned me. Imagine a 2 kilogram flying disc lands right on your forehead. My great-great-grandfather had a ticket for the Titanic, but met my great-great-grandmother who was going to America sooner. He decided he couldn't wait to see her again and bought a ticket for an earlier boat. Back when I was young and impressionable, someone stopped me on the street and asked if I'd like to do a free personality test. After enthusiastically filling out the answers to a long list of probing questions, the person who'd approached me asked how old I was. Since I was under 18, they said they'd have to get a parent's permission to give me my results. They call my mum, who tells them to stick their test up their ass, or words to that effect, then proceeds to give me an extended talking to about trusting strange people with my personal information. And that's how I learned who the Church of Scientology were. Holy crap, dude, you definitely dodged a bullet. Went on a date once with the photographer from my cousin's wedding. I was in the wedding party, so we spent much of the day chatting. He was good looking and amicable, so I figured why not. We went for coffee and it was perfectly pleasant. We chatted about the usual stuff. He told me more about his upcoming photo tour of Europe. Nothing unusual, but nothing special either. Got an awkward one-armed hug at the end and he said we'd get in touch when he was back, which was about 4 months' time. 4 months came and went and I just let it go. It had been pleasant but tepid and I guess I kind of forgot about it. Jump ahead a few years and I'm browsing the news and I see a familiar face. The photographer, who is now in jail for an unprecedented collection of unique child pee that he made, more of which, authorities guessed, was on the hard drive with military level encryption they'd seized that police still couldn't crack years later. That photography tour of Europe, yeah, he was in Thailand. Cool. Well, that escalated quickly to disturbing levels. So in 2006 I was losing weight so that I could finally afford health insurance. I figured out that if I lost 60 pounds, a $5,000 deductible plan would be roughly $100 more cheaper. In 2007 I've lost the weight and I get insurance on the 1st of February and go to get my first checkup in a long while. Everything comes back clean. The 15th of March I go home and my dad, a physician, doesn't like the look of me and takes me to get some scans. Turns out the weight I lost was due to cancer and the previous doc had fricked up and not run the right tests. But because he had fricked up and given me a clean bill of health, the insurance company couldn't claim that the cancer was a pre-existing condition despite my having insurance for 90 days. Cancer is all gone, but I didn't get stuck with a $500,000 hospital bill because of a doc who fricked up. I was making a day trip in Colorado to do some sightseeing. It was just me and the dog, driving a few hours over Wolf Creek Pass. I felt a little off and stopped up near the top of the pass to get some fresh air at a waterfall. I figured I was just sleepy and at altitude, so I decided to actually hike the mile round trip to the falls and wake up a bit. On the way back down the trail I had a seizure. If I'd not stopped I would have been coming down the pass when it happened. Worked for a campus PD while I was in college. Had been unsuccessfully flirting a bit with one of our part-time clerks who was a mother twice over at 22, living in Section 8 housing, etc. Not a bad thing in and of itself, just providing some context. My longtime girlfriend had bounced a few months back, so I had thrown myself into my work and was advancing quickly in the department. Well enough that I had a salaried slot on the horizon. Feeling good about things in general, I figured I'd just roll with it when she suddenly started giving me the time of day. Had our first big night of romance coming on a Saturday night when I get a text from OFC. Derp that just said cancel. Now, WTTYL. Wasn't sure WTH was up, but I did just that. Called her up on the spot and said sorry, problem with my car. No way I could get it to her shop and out in time for our date. She didn't have a car. Few hours later I swing by the PD and he told me what had happened. She had worked earlier in the day and was at the front desk not realizing OFC. Derp was in the squad room. You can hear conversations up front from there. He overheard her on her cell talking to one of her girlfriends about how she was going to get paid tonight. Girl followed by no, I'm only like 5 weeks. He won't be able to tell cause the dates will be close. God bless you Brian. God bless you. Christ, Brian is the man. Meningitis. 2:30 am. Couldn't sleep. 3:30 am I'm having spinal taps done at a medical center. 2 doctors gave me 15% survival upon arrival. 24 hours later I moved to ICU for the next 8 days. Last day in hospital they told me I'd dodge a bullet Matrix style and should not be here. I had my police car pulled over off the side of this rural road, with the emergency lights on. I had stopped because there was a man splayed out in the middle of the asphalt. Turns out he was super drunk and decided to take a nap during his walk home. I had just helped him to his feet and placed him in the back of the car to drive him home when I hear an engine revving hard. I closed the car door and straightened up just in time to have my car smashed out from in front of me by a pickup truck. I felt the truck's side mirror clip my body armor. The driver was drunk and had decided to go looking for his drunk friend. That friend was the guy I just picked up. The guy in the backseat survived the impact because those old Crown Victorias had massive trunks. The driver went to the hospital, and in the coming months, he pleaded guilty to impaired driving. I remember the collision analysis showed that the guy hit my car at 145 km/h. It was a wild night, and I still have major hang-ups when I have to stop my police car on roadways. I had a type of bone cancer, Ewing's sarcoma, when I was 10. It usually shows up in the bone itself, which usually makes one lose whichever limb the bone is in. Mine, fortunately, started in the surrounding flesh and was working its way towards the bone. The tumor grew so fast that I only realized it when I bumped my leg against a rock that I should not have hit. The tumor was about the size of a softball. Because of finding it like this, we got to it early enough that it could be removed before it reached the bone. I still got 9 months of chemo to make sure it was all removed though. I kept my leg, although I have a large scar on the outside of my left leg above the knee running to mid-thigh, and a large dip in the same area. Also have some kidney damage relating to the type of chemo they gave me. Although things are looking up there, this May I was 6 years cancer free, and I would have lost my leg if we wouldn't have caught it any later. I went on one date with a girl I worked with. She was cute but there were red flags. Some obvious, some not so much. She had been in jail and had an ankle monitor. That was probably the biggest red flag. Other than that she just seemed a little off. Things fizzled easily enough between us. No harm done and we didn't even do anything to make life at work awkward. Then a co-worker starts dating her and before too long both of them weren't working there anymore for unrelated reasons. We end up finding out later she murdered the guy. She stabbed him like 20-30 times in the back with a kitchen knife. It was very sad. He was a good guy and definitely didn't deserve to go out like that. I learned this all secondhand from mutual friends after I had lost contact with him. Was traveling to somewhere on a highway behind a logging truck. When we were going uphill, the truck changed lanes and a log slipped off, bounced between the car I was in and another car, and rebounded off the highway into the nearby forest. There was no one immediately behind us. Lived outside of St. Louis in my early childhood. Woke up screaming in the worst pain of my life and then felt my face get sprinkled with something. I actually got shot in the hip, and when I sat up a bullet went through my window right where my head was just at, and what sprinkled me in the face was tiny pieces of glass. So I dodged a little bullet by taking a bullet. Before my wife and I met she had a single date with someone. The date went fine but she found him to be overbearing. He pulled his dong out for her to touch as an example, so they didn't go out again. They remained friendly until 2 weeks later when he murdered his next date and set her on fire. He is now in prison for those who may want to know. Whoa, that escalated pretty quickly, and I thought it was bad to begin with. My ex-boyfriend told me he was sterile. I started insisting on condoms anyway, just in case. Eventually I broke up with him. He currently has 2 kids with the girl he started dating after me. That would be really awkward if he was telling the truth and those kids aren't his. Just saying. Saying bullet freaking dodged really downplays the seriousness of this situation. When I was in my early 20s I went out to the bar with some friends one night. My friend was Dee Dee and I was drinking. I had a very solid buzz going on when I bumped into someone I knew from HS who was clearly flirting with me. I ended up leaving my friends and catching a cab back to her apartment. The next morning I found out my friend who was supposed to DD got drunk then behind the wheel. He ended up getting into an accident and, while no one had any critical injuries, there were a few broken bones, etc. I could have very easily have been in that car. Talk about fate. I dodged a bullet by not marrying my ex-fiancée. I can't have kids, and I told him that early on. And when he did propose I asked him again, and multiple times thereafter, if he was sure that he would never change his mind. I don't want someone marrying me and then resenting me feeling like they're missing out. He reassured me time and time again that he didn't want kids and never really had. 5 months before our wedding, he broke up with me, with this big story about how he felt like we had been growing apart and he didn't have the same feelings anymore and maybe he would want children someday and blah blah blah. I was devastated, of course, and then furious when I found out the real reason. He had been cheating on me and knocked some girl up. They got married a few months after the baby was born, and then not long after that, she got pregnant again. Before that baby was born, that butthole, that complete and utter piece of crap, contacted me and had a big long sob story about how he had made a mistake, how his life was so hard, how he didn't like being a father, and how I was so much nicer and his wife was such a b. Probably because she actually needed him to help around the house and with the baby, and get a freaking job instead of sitting on his ass watching YouTube all day. Not sure why I ever wanted to marry this butthole in the first place tbh. Then as an afterthought he threw in that he missed me. I told him to frick off. He and his first wife have now divorced and he is married to yet another woman who he knocked up on accident. Their kid is a little under a year old and word on the street is that he is still a cheating lazy butthole. I am so freaking glad that this crap all happened before we got married instead of after. The broken engagement was brutal but much better than if we had been married. The night of the Aurora Theater shooting in Colorado, some friends and I had planned to go to the Aurora movie theater for Batman. As we are all huge Batman fans, one of my friends convinced us to go to a different theater that was closer to her since she couldn't get a ride. A couple people we were supposed to meet up with in Aurora were in the theater, but luckily got out unharmed. Guess that's a bullet dodged. I read a verified thread on Reddit from a woman who was in the theater. It was horrifying. I'm glad your other friends were okay. I once took a girl online out to dinner at a nicer place in our town. She was horrible to the server and actually got us kicked out because she called the manager a C. After that we were walking out and she wanted me to go back to her place to watch a movie which I refused and went home. 2 months later I was reading the paper and saw her in the police blotter for assaulting her boyfriend with a golf club. Good thing she didn't ask you to go clubbing with her, then. Was bouldering unprotected in the Owens Valley like an idiot, descending, slipped, fell 6 feet down with outward momentum onto a 10-foot wide shelf, only just stopping myself before the 50-foot drop to death injury pain. Still spooks the heck out of me to think about. Thanks for tuning in for this WTF Red episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the one and only askreddit channel that will blow your mind every time.